everyone, and welcome to the 12th episode of the Sharper Edge podcast. I am Betty Parker, and I'm happy to have you here again this week for another people issue we're going to try to unpack. And I am so excited to have as my special guest today Dr. Katrina Hutchins of Resource Solutions, who is always filled with so much knowledge and so much, just a wealth of information in terms of how do we navigate relationships and how do we traverse this earth and still feel like the things that we are doing matter? And so we talk a lot offline about life events and occurrences. And today is no different than any of those, except we invite you into the conversation today. So we are open to any comments or any insights that you might have on today's topic, which is the power of the tongue. We're going to talk about communications. We know that's where the bulk of a lot of challenges lie in our building relationships and building trust and helping people to hear us and for us to be heard. And so I am excited that Dr. Katrina can come and offer some of her insights as well. So welcome, my friend.
Thank you so much, Betty. It is always such an honor to be with you. You know, as you were talking about how much we talk offline, it also took me back to, probably 10 years ago doing radio with you. Remember when there was just radio?
Yeah, you remember when?
This was very boring, right? So there was just radio.
Yeah.
So to be able to show up and be present with you in your space, I love it. And I'm so honored to be here. So thank you.
You are welcome. You're welcome. So today we've got some hot topics because so much has been going on in the world today. I don't even know where to start, but I want us to focus on what's important in terms of what comes out of our mouths, because we know that the only thing that we can control in these relationships is our own behavior. Okay, so we might influence the behavior of the people in front of us by the things we say and do, but ultimately we are the ones who are in control of us. So I want us to talk about this idea of the power of words. And I'm just going to, we could just hop into it. So let's talk about it. I want to start with an event and something that happened this week that raised a lot of questions and concerns and opinions around it. And I sent you the video clip. And this involves a woman, a first lady at a church, who offers correct and rebuke to someone who is on her, I assume that's the praise team. And she does this out in a very public forum. And so there was a lot of chatter in the comment section about how do we give feedback to people so that we're not embarrassing them. We're not making them feel, like, the bottom of the barrel in terms of how we see them. There's just so much I'm sure that young lady was going through being put out, in a public forum. In the way that she did. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, it's so interesting. And I think I can approach it. So since you talk about people problems on your podcast, I want to approach it from a people standpoint. So just kind of more globally, and then we can kind of hone in on that part. I was actually speaking with a group of people that I had an opportunity to present to yesterday. And I said to them, I believe that sometimes we forget humanity. So when our eyes open in the morning, before we, jump out of bed, before our feet hit the floor, before there's a title, before there's a position, before there is anything that we might be going into, we have to remember humanity. And one thing that I know about humanity, and science tells us this just in brain studies, that all humans have three intrinsic needs, and they are to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think those are the missing components from healthy communication. So when I think about this incident, I'm not team anybody. I'm team humanity, right? So it's not about taking sides. It's about looking at the process of how we meet people, how we communicate with people, where they are and where we are. And I believe, according to scripture, that if we have something against any other human, we are supposed to go to that person.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I believe that has happened in our society, well, three things. There is a microphone, a platform, and an opinion, right?
Yes.
Sometimes those things are not a good mix of things
Mm-hmm.
to have, right? When I think about being instruments of peace, oftentimes these things can be instruments of destruction.
Yes.
So I go back to what the word says is that it is to go to a person privately, to have those intimate conversations, those one-on-one conversations. The word says, come, let us reason together.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have some intimate conversation about the thing that might be happening between us. And so for me, Betty, that is a starting point. That is a starting point. I don't believe that the public arena is the starting point for a
Right.
private situation.
I totally agree. And so when you think about, you're talking about let us come and reason together. It seems like reasoning has gone completely out of the window. People no longer want to reason, it seems. It's
Yeah,
my opinion. It's my opinion that matters. I should be able to say whatever I need to say and want to say. The First Amendment protects my right to do that without any kind of responsibility around how my words land on the other side.
that's
And
right.
so they
That's
get offended because you get offended. And I think there's a certain responsibility we all should have with this freedom to speak our minds.
I totally agree. That's one frustration I have about social media, because people will post their fiery, sometimes very toxic opinions, and then
Mhm.
they'll have a disclaimer in the comments or at the bottom, and do not come for me, meaning do not say anything about what I just said.
Mhm.
Well, healthy communication invites healthy feedback,
Yeah.
right? And so
Mhm.
there is that exchange. I feel like there is kind of sometimes this opportunity people take to throw a rock and not want anything thrown
Right.
back at them, right?
Mhm.
So there is that piece around being mutual in how we want to exchange. The golden rule still stands: do unto others
Mhm.
as you would have others do unto you. And as I was sharing with that group yesterday, sometimes the missing opportunity, I believe, is to, even in the heat of a trigger, right? We could be triggered by something someone has said or done. In the heat of a moment, pausing long enough to ask the question, I wonder what their story is. You said it earlier. I wonder what they're going through,
Mhm.
right? So, thinking more about your response as opposed to your reaction, because
Right.
we can react immediately. That's our human instinct to just
Mhm.
react to a trigger in some way
Yeah.
that we've been triggered. But a response, from my opinion, is more thoughtful. You get to determine, that's where our power is. We get to determine how we're going to respond. Sometimes the determination is in the heat of a trigger to be able to say, how do I want this to end? Not how do I feel right now, but how do
Mhm.
I want this to end?
Mhm. So, Dr. K, something you said that I think was so incredibly important is this whole, when it's an acute situation, when something happens, and in that moment, you immediately, because I hear people say all the time, they're going to match energy, right? So,
Yeah,
you say something to me that I don't like, boom, without a lot of thought, I'm coming right back at you because we tend to act out of emotion, right? I get a
yeah,
gut punch from something you say, and immediately I want to lash out. But you're saying that I should pause first and think
yes,
about how I want this situation to end. Now, how
yes.
do I train myself to do that? Because remember, I'm all emotions at this particular point, right? I'm going based on how I feel. I'm not being rational in that moment.
Well, it is certainly practice. I wish I had a magic wand that I could just wave it over your podcast listeners' ears, and they wake up in the morning and all of this is taken care of. But
Right.
it literally is a matter of practice. And I talk about, Betty, oftentimes listening athletically, meaning practicing your muscles, building your listening muscles. And the first person that we need to listen to is ourselves. We need to determine, okay, If I match this energy, where is this really going to go? If I match this energy, how will this end? What will be resolved? And sometimes we can tell that by our first thought. If our first thought to respond in a heated situation is one of two things, and the first one is if our sentence starts with, first of all, we already know it's not going in a positive direction.
It's not going well.
And so, also if our sentence starts with, okay, what you're not going to do is,
What you
right?
gonna not do is.
And we're using the finger. We already know we are not in the best place
Mhm.
to have the conversation. And even when I think about pausing or taking that personal pause, I call it taking the pee break, your personal pause. Sometimes the pause is not to continue, it is to come back to, because sometimes we cannot get it together in that moment.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's just wise to say, can we please pause here? Because I'm not in the best place to have this conversation right now.
Mhm.
And that's okay. That's okay, because we should think about the preservation of the relationship more than getting our point across, more than matching energy, more than getting them told and giving them a piece of our minds, all of
Mhm.
those things that can be our default setting if we're not careful.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything that comes to our mind should not always be the thing that we give other people until we have the opportunity to examine the thing that
Mhm.
came to our mind. Should I really be saying this? Right.
Mhm.
And so that slowdown. So to answer your question, it is the slowdown in the moment, slowing ourselves down,
Yeah.
almost to the degree that, remember Charlie Brown, and when adults were talking, it sounded like wah, 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 wah.
Right.
Down to the degree that sometimes you have to suspend what's happening in order to get your emotional state together,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
emotional, that self-examination, to determine, should I continue? Should we pause here? Is it worth saying what I'm feeling and thinking in this moment? Or is this the time to reason together?
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And because what you're saying, a lot of times we don't know how to take the emotion out of what we're feeling and what we're dealing with, out of what we're feeling, but out of what we're dealing with. And so when we don't know how to remove our emotion, we become irrational in our behavior. We're simply reacting to something that has happened. And those reactions, when not well thought out, lead us into some very dangerous territory. So we might not be able to preserve that relationship
That's
because we
right.
may say or do something that is irreparable. People don't forget when you hurt them, even if you may not have meant it in a moment because you're acting out of your emotions. But folks will hold on to that. They may say, I forgive you, but they always believe that's your truth right there. That's the true person who you are. When you spoke this thing out loud and treated me the way you did, that's the one they're going to cling to, no matter how apologetic you might be.
That's
So,
right.
I like the whole idea that you say about pausing, just slowing down all the heat that's in the moment to be able to have a reasonable conversation with people. So, if we
Yeah,
go back,
to your point, Betty, people don't forget how we make them feel. You
right.
know, even with the apology, and we can even accept the apology, but we do not forget the feeling of it. That part
Mm-mm,
does not go away. And
mm-mm,
so that's why when we think about the power of our tongue and the capability of our tongue to be hurtful, our words to be hurtful, our words to cut deeply. That's
mm-hmm,
why pausing, the slowing down, to be thoughtful, to be sensitive, to be prayerful about how we respond in a given situation and asking for wisdom and
mm-hmm,
discernment. Otherwise, what we can leave with, we can feel like we got them told in the moment. But if we really have a heart to be pleasing to God,
mm-hmm.
that moment can be fleeting, and then in rushes the regret, because
Yeah.
now we feel the conviction of what we've done. and just
Mhm.
by hurting others. Yeah.
Let me tell you something about that conviction. And you have mentioned your faith, our faith, because we're Christians and we believe what the word says in terms of how we're supposed to interact with each other. The basis of all of our values is love, right? So God is love. We believe that you got to love other people in the various ways that we should show love. However, I'm going to tell you, I'm getting a little frustrated with these so-called Christians running
Yeah.
around here, giving our faith a really bad reputation
Mhm.
because of the way they're behaving. Everybody who professes to be Christian needs to make sure that they're avidly reading the Word of God, so that conviction you just spoke about can hit them where it needs to. Because there's a lot of people who are not taking into consideration. Look, I got this proverb here. This is what I'm working on this week, and I always try to drop a proverb somewhere. But the
Mhm.
tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. That's Proverbs 18:21. So if the things that I say out loud to people can either give people life or totally destroy them, then I have to be very thoughtful about the words that leave my mouth.
Yes.
So, what kind of fruits am I producing in another human being by the words that I say? What do you think?
Absolutely. Listen, before you read the proverb and you were saying, I'm very frustrated, by Christians, or as you said, so-called
So
Christians,
called.
the very first thing that came to my mind is, and you shall know them by their fruit. Right.
Yes.
So when you read the proverb, I'm like, yes, it's about the
Mhm.
fruit. What kind of fruit are we producing? And what is coming out of our heart? Because
Mhm.
whatever is in there, Betty, it's going to show up.
Yes, it will.
And oftentimes it shows up in the heat of a moment, wherever there is conflict or a difference of opinion and things of that nature.
Mhm.
And but when we think about the fruit of the spirit, as we read about in scripture, it is tempered with love and joy and peace and
Yes.
patience
Self
and
control.
self-control, all of
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And so if I'm naming myself, if I am declaring that that's who I am, and there is this consistent misrepresentation of that, then I have to consider, if, am I really that? Right? Am I really that? And
Mhm.
so, this is not about judgment, right? It's not judging, but it
Mhm.
is about, what are we producing, right? What are we producing? What are we giving out to others? And I am as perplexed in some ways and confused
Right?
in a lot of ways by what I see. And again, it goes back to having a microphone and a platform and an opinion and feeling like we are the judge
Mhm.
of other things. But
Mhm.
sometimes we are not rightfully judging, right? We are not rightfully taking into consideration many dynamics and just kind of many um, things that are a part of a situation, and we don't have the whole story.
That's right. Absolutely. Communicating is very complex. And I don't think people think about that. They're only thinking about what the moment is that they're in and what they want to say in that moment. They don't
Mhm.
think about all of the other things that their words are going to impact by offering their opinions and their judgment, as you described. So I want to challenge people who do profess to be Christians to go to the Word of God and to really read it and understand it and then live it.
Yeah.
Because the folks who are professing this, are showing me something totally different from the word I read. So I'm perplexed as well. It's like, and then the people who co-sign on what they say too, Katrina.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
in these platforms, there, the comment section is always live. Everybody runs to the comment section, right? Because they want to see what everybody else is
Yeah.
thinking. And so if you got a controversial topic, it's good to be able to hear, all different perspectives. But the folks who co-sign on things that I know clearly aren't demonstrated by what the Christ I know showed us, like accepting people and being
Mhm.
tolerant of people and loving people and not trashing people because they are different from you. We
That's
are
right.
all God's handiwork, right? So when you start trashing somebody else, you're saying to God, he messed up. He made a mistake. These
For
people
sure.
over here you created are not good enough, God, so you failed. Who are you to judge God's handiwork? That's what irritates me. And so
Mhm.
when I say, "Oh yeah, I like do my little like button," because somebody's trashed somebody because of their race, their color, their gender, their culture, whatever, I'm like, this is not of Christ. This is not Christian at all in terms
That's
of our values. Yeah, so you're being a hypocrite.
That's right. And some of these things, Betty, as you're describing, as a Christian, it should break our heart, not fuel our fire, right?
Right,
It should
right.
break our heart to see others in various situations and going through various things. And sometimes our duty or our obligation or our opportunity is to commit it to prayer. Committed to prayer. We don't have to post about everything. We don't have to respond about everything. Sometimes it is just we see certain things just to pray, not to comment on,
How about that?
not to weigh in our opinion, but it is to commit that thing to prayer. We see again in Scripture, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves.
Humble yourself. Come
Right.
on.
Humble themselves. Let's stay
Right.
right there. Humble themselves, right? Humble themselves because
Doing that
sometimes
badly.
we see things because there is that lack of humility and there is
Mhm.
that sense of pride. And sometimes the harshest judgment comes from an unexamined heart.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Right?
Right?
We don't start with us. And so it's so easy to judge harshly others because it's coming from an unexamined heart.
Hmm.
Sometimes when we look at our stuff
Oh
and
boy.
really examine our stuff deeply, it
Hmm.
gives to us more grace to offer others. Because
Absolutely.
how can I judge harshly when I'm over here dealing with my own business that needs to be dealt with?
Absolutely.
And so sometimes when we see what we see, we can already know that person is a person that never looks in their mirror, never examines their heart.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they could not be this harsh and offer no grace if they were also doing the work that
Hmm.
that we all need to do and live from the inside out.
100%. Because I'm telling you, your own life will humble you if you're willing to look at your life honestly. So I would sit over here and say, how in the world can I say that about that person when
Absolutely.
I'm a total wreck and a mess over here? But see, people don't see that. For whatever reason, they've convinced themselves they got it all sewn up. They're right. They're the ones they're righteous. They're good. Their lives are set. People should admire them. But yet they're out here looking for somebody to impress because they need, there's a need, I believe, out there for people who are attention seeking, to
Mhm.
have somebody to tell them they're good enough or whatever it is that they're looking for, right? So that's why they flock to social media. A lot of them, not everybody. Some people go just for the entertainment. I go to be enlightened at times, and I'm not being enlightened anymore, Katrina. I just see a
No.
lot of discord and
Yes.
people frustrated with one another, and just a lot of people taking things personally and a lot of anger. So I call it the anti-social media because what it was intended for initially, it's only dividing people because if we go in full circle here, we're back to because of people's judgment and folks, using their words, the power of their words to denigrate other people. And so it just becomes just really frustrating. What
It
would
is.
you recommend then when we're communicating since these online platforms are not going anywhere?
That's
What
right.
kind of solutions can we give to people when they are trying to have and build connection through social media?
Well, first, I want to go back to something you just said. And because when I imagine, if I could reimagine social media, I wonder how much of this we would see if like and love buttons went away, if
Mm,
the emojis went away,
uh-huh.
if the ability to comment went away, right?
Yeah.
And you could make your posts, but nobody could comment, like, love, give commentary.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much of what we see would still be what we see, because to your point, sometimes it's about the affirmation you get from saying what you said,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or commenting the way that you commented.
Yep.
In one of our offline conversations, I was saying, sometimes we can see people in grave danger, at the point of death or dying. We would
Hmm.
not help them, but we'll pick up our camera so we can record it happening.
In a
Right.
heartbeat.
So
Yes.
it's removed that sense of sensitivity to others, right? And so to answer your question, what would I say, as it relates to social media etiquette, just thinking about the other person being human
Yeah.
before their opinion, before their, the thing that has triggered you to respond with fire or whatever that is, start with humanity and
Hmm.
this sense of sensitivity to another person. Now, that's not me saying, listen, the Bible commands us to love. There are going to be multiple people that we can love that we don't like.
Right. Absolutely. There is a difference. Yes.
There is a difference, on social media. There is the category of friends. Like, these are your friends. I've got 7,000 and something friends, I think, or at least followers. So listen to what it says, friends.
Mm-hmm.
What if social media had a category of enemies? Would you have a
Oh,
list of those in, like, these are my enemies,
yes.
here are my friends, these are my enemies, these are my associates, right? Really start breaking out these categories.
Hmm.
And so not falling into just this, it feels like a trap of toxicity that if we're not careful, we'll get locked into this cycle of
Hmm.
just broadcasting and reacting, and
Reacting.
not not really considering what we are supposed to be doing, and that's being sensitive to others, meeting people where they are. I
Hmm.
love that as we watch the ministry of Christ as he walked, right? One of the things that I love the most is that no matter where he met a person, he met them where they were. He
Right.
never met them where he wanted them to be.
That's right.
He met them where they were.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, Betty, we are just unwilling to meet people where they are
Mhm.
because we have determined where they should be. So we treat them according to our shoulds and
Yes.
not with the grace that we could be offering them at any given moment.
When you think about the people that Jesus hung out with,
Yeah.
they were people who would be considered the dregs of society, right?
Yes.
But these were his people. I mean, and he got trashed for it. You sitting out here with these sinners. Well, yeah, he goes that self-examination you just talked about. We're all sinners. So he's with prostitutes and tax collectors and
Yeah.
murderers and all these kinds of people. But to your point, he
Yeah.
didn't come at them crazy. He was just trying to win them over in the place that they existed to try to show them a better way. And we do not extend that grace to other people.
Yeah.
We sit in judgment of them and tell them they're not good enough and therefore they should be cast aside. And let me give you all the reasons why you're trash. And then walk away from it upset that somebody would be upset with us, for pushing back on that.
That's
And
right.
then we're not going to talk about the stereotyping, are we? How we throw a whole bucket of people, populations of
Yes.
people, because
Mhm.
there's a small subset that do behave badly. But that small subset behaves badly in every cultural group. There's
Absolutely.
not one group of people that can say their entire population is on point.
That's
But
right.
yet we take the behaviors of that small set, and because we don't like something about the entire group, we just broad stroke them all the
You
same
know,
way.
we apply it to everyone. We apply it to everyone. And
Yeah.
there's a danger. And I believe that I cannot remember, it was a TED talk. And I believe the title of it was The Danger of a Single Narrative or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Just an amazing TED talk, but it just spoke to when we have this single narrative, when even if we've written the single narrative and we treat people out of that narrative, we box them in to our almost level of comfort with them. right? So we're comfortable holding people at a certain place because we are unwilling to do what we're talking about, is
Mm-hmm.
to be sensitive to them, to, to treat them according to humanity, the things that we are supposed to be doing. We'd rather write a narrative about them and then hold them to the narrative we've created, which could
Yeah.
be a completely false narrative. Yeah,
Absolutely. That's
right.
Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. You're right. It's the
Yes.
danger of a single story. So check her
The
out on
danger
TED
of a
Talk or
single
YouTube.
story. So
Yes,
powerful, so very powerful.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
so we hold people hostage to not even their story, to our
mhm, to
story
our
about,
story of them. Yes.
yeah, to our story about them. And that
Hmm.
is so dangerous. That's a dangerous place, not just for them, but it's a dangerous place for us because that means we're holding something in our hearts and our spirits that just don't belong there. And it's not going to serve us well.
No. And the
Yeah.
thing is, it's like you said, it's our story of them. So there's
Mhm.
a lot of ignorance in that story. There's so much we don't know. But nonetheless, we tell ourselves this story over and over again about that individual based on a lot of superficial things. And we
Mhm.
place heavy, heavy judgment upon people. And then those words, so we go and we tell other people about it. And if you're with the same group of people who think like you, then nobody's going to dispel that story. We're just going to perpetuate that story over and over and over again, adding some more stuff on top of that so that the story that
Absolutely.
even first started doesn't even look the same, right? And meanwhile, this person's reputation and the way they're being treated is going to be, totally disrespected or disrespectful, and all of the things that make it difficult to connect with people, right? Because we've
Mhm.
created these barriers for them.
That's
And
right.
I don't blame people who don't trust and don't want to share too much of themselves, because to do that, when you give people just a little bit of an inch or so, they take that, run with it, pile a whole bunch of other junk on top of it, and even
Yes.
you don't recognize the story that's been told about you. So some people just kind of stay closed off, and I hate that for them because I'm a big, hey,
Yeah.
let's go get with everybody and chit chat
Yeah.
and learn and about each other and stay curious and
Yeah.
connect and all that. And we're
Mhm.
losing that, especially on the social media front.
We are.
And I think we need to get back to sitting across from somebody and talking to people and inviting them into meaningful conversations on a personal level. That's why I don't comment a lot. People may see, I know, according to the analytics, you can tell when people have looked at your post. Some folks go out and look for that stuff, and why didn't they comment on it or like it or whatever? I don't comment on everything, and I don't
And
like
I
it.
don't care, right? So that's
Right.
the other part,
Yeah.
So if you post, like, I think this is the thing that we're both talking about. If we post, if we're commenting, before we do it, Betty, I think we should examine our motive. Why are we posting this? Like, what are we
Mhm.
hoping for? When I post, my hope is that anything I post is inspirational.
Yeah.
I just want to inspire others on their journey.
Right.
So that's my personal, motive. I'm not imposing that on anyone, but that is my personal motive. But
Yeah.
I am suggesting before we post, stopping long enough to say, what is my motive for posting this? Who
Mhm.
do I want? Who's the audience that I want this post to even reach,
Right.
right? Am I sending a subliminal message through this post because I'm thinking of one person and I hope they do read it and see it?
It's called shade.
Right, shade. Because why?
Mhm.
I am not going to do the thing that I maybe should do, and that is, if I have something against them and it brings us full circle to go
Mhm.
to them and have that conversation, as opposed to going to social media with subliminal messages in
Mhm.
hopes that that person will see it and know that, yes, I'm talking about you. Right.
Yeah. First
So
of all, it's a cowardly way to do it.
energy.
Huh?
That is so much energy and such a poor use of energy
Yep.
and authentic communication.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's cowardly. I'm like, if you
I
got
do
something to
too.
say to somebody, just go to that person and say it. So this brings us back to our original when we first started talking about the incident that showed the first lady, kind of
Yeah.
lambasting this young lady in her church.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the whole point, we know as Christians, since this was a faith-based situation, the word tells us that we're supposed to go to that individual alone. That happened in a private setting. It should have stayed in a private setting.
Mhm.
So I'm with you. If we're going to be talking to somebody about something we do not like, or having to pull somebody's coattails on something, if it's not on social media, keep it off social media and go to that individual and have a private
Yes.
conversation. It's always about praising in public and correcting in the private, right?
Mhm.
So if you
Mhm.
want to do it the right way and still
Yeah.
preserve that relationship, you want to respect that person and then have a, because when everybody else is peering in, what people don't often think about, I don't think, is that when you post up on Facebook or Instagram or any of these social media platforms, you're inviting the entire world to come in on
That's
that
right.
conversation. And it
Mhm.
can easily get hijacked by somebody who has very little knowledge of the situation, but yet they got plenty to say, you
Mhm.
know? So we have to think about, like you say, pause and reflect and figure out, why am I posting this? What's my motivation? What do I plan to get out of this when all
Abs-
is said and done? Now, in
Absolutely.
my naivete, let me say this too. I believe, and this is how crazy I think sometimes, but if, let's take Facebook for example, you have to ask somebody to be your friend or they
Mhm.
have to ask you.
That's
So
right.
if I'm inviting you into my circle, I'm more thoughtful about what I put out there on my Facebook page if I've allowed you to be a part of this. So I'm not going to say or do things that might be offensive to you when
That's
I've
right.
said welcome in. All right. I'm not
That's
welcoming you
good.
in to trash you and whoever you're
Mhm.
connected to. Now, if
Mhm.
people want to just be followers, that's their choice and they can unfollow any day, but that's a more personal thing to me. So if I take it on a more physical setting, it's like me inviting you into my house. Would I invite you in my house and then insult you for
And
being
then mistreat you. Yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's like, think about that, because you shouldn't have ever accepted them in if that's the stuff you're going to be posting and disrupting people. And I'm going to say this and I'll shut up because I know you got things to say. I've only blocked a couple of people in however many years I've been on Facebook. And one of them in particular, I still consider him a friend, and we talk on LinkedIn now. I don't do Facebook with him. And I think he got off Facebook altogether. He was upset because I unfriended him. But I
Yeah.
told him, the people that's in your feed that pop up, when you're posting, are offensive to me. And I
Mhm.
allowed some of that to happen for a minute, but I don't want to keep seeing that. And
Right.
it was a lot of racial stuff, and it
Mhm.
was very, very derogatory. And so I didn't want that in my life. And so I'm like, dude, I got to get you out of here. And he apologized for them, but I'm like, that's the people you associate with.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if they feel that way and you're co-signing on that because it was
Mhm.
just so, yeah, it just doesn't sit well with me. We have to be much more thoughtful.
Absolutely. And Betty, I will tell you, one of the best features I think that Facebook did create was the unfollow button.
Unfollow,
Unfollow.
block.
So listen, I may not block you, but I have unfollowed so many people
Hmm.
so that I don't see it, right? So they may still be, kind of listed as friends or whatever, but
Hmm.
I don't see what they're posting because I've
Hmm.
unfollowed them. So to me, what I'm really saying is I don't dislike you. I just don't want to see what you're doing. Like I
Right.
don't want to see what you're saying
Yeah.
because in some ways it could be offensive, it could be toxic, it could just be things that are disturbing my peace,
Hmm.
right? So I don't dislike you as a person, but I don't want to be connected to your actions, right? So,
Yeah.
or I don't want to see it. So I've unfollowed tons and tons and tons of people so
Yeah.
that I don't even see what they're doing. I want to go back to something you said because I think there is also an element of accountability connected to this. And
Hmm.
you said, if you're surrounded by people that just egg you on to do
Hmm.
those things, you probably need to have some other people in
Yes.
your life, right? I appreciate the people in my life that also serve as wise counsel. And
Mm-hmm.
they will, they will say, if we come together to talk about a given situation. I have one friend in particular, she's so good at listening, and she'll let me say the things that I want to say. And her response will start with, let me remind you.
Yeah.
So powerful,
Mm-hmm.
because I know you know this, but in the heat of a moment,
Mm-hmm.
I want to remind you that blank. Right?
Uh-huh.
And so sometimes we just need people in our lives that remind us, where we stand and what we believe, and how our way of being, right? To
Mm-hmm.
kind of bring us back. And so having that social support in our lives as a way of being accountable. If I'm in a fiery moment, I should be able to send you a text to say, Betty, I'm about to post this. What do you think? So you
Yes.
help me be accountable to how I want to be represented.
Right.
So you
Mm-hmm.
can say, okay, but let me remind you, that's not a good representation of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Right.
can't stop you. You're an adult, but that's not going to represent you well if you say
Mm-hmm.
that. Right? So
Mm-hmm.
we need accountability people especially in a heated moment. If we go back to the situation that we were talking about, that what happened in the church setting, how might it have been different had the first lady gone to say, okay, to someone to get wise counsel, perhaps to say,
Right.
what I'm feeling in the moment. And I'm thinking about saying it out loud. When I get the
Mm-hmm.
microphone and I get in the pulpit, I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to say this thing. Chances are she could have been brought back to what the word tells us to be,
Yeah.
right? And it
Mm-hmm.
would not have been the disruption. But look at what this has opened up. It went viral,
Yes.
people with all kinds of opinions on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just not a good decision. Look at the impact it's had.
Yes.
Multitudes of people that stand
Right.
in different places.
Mm-hmm.
In the clip that was, I don't even know how long, but look at the impact
Right.
that it's had, right?
Yep.
And so when we're making certain decisions, certain choices, and at this season in my life, I can even look back and see, how decisions and choices and all of those things have great impact. And we may not be thinking about that in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to be thinking about it in our
Absolutely.
moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to be thinking about it in our moments.
Mm-hmm. And so what happens online oftentimes, Katrina, then gets taken offline into the community.
Mhm.
So now, and this is especially, a real detriment to young people. So a lot of stuff gets said on these sites, these social media sites, and these young people go out in the community, and then when they come across each other, it's explosive. And
Yes,
same thing with more adult folks as well, because we are just seething from some of the things that we've seen and heard by somebody. So when I have to encounter you in public, then the disrespect continues. And so we
absolutely.
got to figure out how to mature past that so
Mhm.
that we can have everybody's been talking about healthy debate this week because of the Charlie Kirk murder. And
Yes.
so everybody's talking about, you keep hearing what makes that controversial is some of the things that he said. Here we go
Mhm.
again, the power of words, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
people were torn between how do I mourn the loss of somebody because somebody actually took a life. And I saw so many times where people said, I don't agree with that at all. Even if I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk, I don't
Mhm.
agree with, taking somebody's life.
Mhm.
Everybody can agree. That's the only thing I
That's
think
right.
everybody agreed on. Yeah. But
Yeah.
then it became, but, his choices of words and his everything he's done and put out into the universe. So that's
Mhm.
where the controversy occurred. And that's what I'm saying. It plays itself out. So wherever, the things that we read and how people get indoctrinated online and radicalized online, it's very real that you get people who don't have the maturity to
That's
be
right.
able to just accept somebody's viewpoint is different from theirs and they act on it. And
That's
when they
exactly
act on
right.
it, they do it in destructive ways,
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
that's why we're saying that's why that that proverb is so powerful because it talks about this little thing here, which is so hard for us to tame.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it gets us in trouble a lot of times. And
Absolutely.
so we're back to what fruit is your tongue producing? Is it rotten fruit or is it something that,
Artificial fruit.
come on? So,
Artificial fruit.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm just, I'm like you. Are we inspiring in the things that we say and do in our lives?
Mhm.
Or are we causing harm to people and destroying relationships that could have so much value if we were to listen? Because communicating is listening as well. Everybody wants to speak, but not everybody wants to listen. And
That's
then when they
right.
listen, they don't want to think, because that listening should be implanting some things in you that make
Mhm.
you stop for a minute and think. I think we're losing our critical thinking skills.
Well, we are for sure in this era of technology and advancing technology. We are losing that ability for critical thought because we don't have to. We've got AI now that can spit out anything for us, right? To replace our voice, to replace
Hmm.
our authentic voice, to replace our critical thinking. So all of this is being replaced, and we've got to
Hmm.
be careful to not allow those things that are just kind of light that we're supposed to be giving. Betty,
Yes.
we are in such dark
Such
times.
darkness.
Look around, and the Bible talks about us being light. It talks about being salt.
Hmm. Hmm.
But if we allow, the things around us, the things of this world to snatch out light from us, to snatch out all the things that we're supposed to be, then we become a part of the problem. We become
Yes.
a part of the darkness.
Hmm.
So when we think about the power of our tongue, choosing to use our words to speak life, to speak light,
Hmm.
right? To speak goodness.
Yeah.
Go back to what, when I was a little girl, my great grandma would say, if you can't say anything nice, then don't say anything, right?
Yep.
Don't say anything at all. And
Hmm.
sometimes we may not be in a situation to say something good, right?
Right.
So then, get yourself together until you can say something good or not say
Hmm.
anything at all.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
Go back to sometimes it's just committing it to prayer. It's not for us to say something or follow up on or comment on.
Right. You do not have to respond every single
Not to
time. You really
everything.
don't.
We don't. I think our greatest power is in not our doing, but sometimes our not doing.
Right.
Right? It takes more strength to not do
It does, to
certain
refrain.
situations. Absolutely.
Yes.
That's where the real power is
Hmm.
sometimes not doing, not commenting, not posting, right? Not sharing our opinion.
It requires that we tap into our emotions, and you can feel your body when it's getting tense at a particular time. So, to your point, when you talked about the power of the pause, if I am paying attention to all the signals that my body is sending me in a tense situation, then I need to react to what my body's signaling, not to what the person just said, but to
That's
what my
right.
body is signaling.
Mhm,
And to
mhm.
your point again, then when I'm taking that pause because I'm paying attention, I can control my emotions better and my reactions, right? So
Absolutely.
tapping into you instead of just what's being said on the other side. I might
Yeah,
need to take a deep breath, do a
for
little
sure.
woosah thing, and say we're gonna have to come back to this later because I'm about to say something we'll both regret. Okay, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Betty. I've had those instances. Sometimes my phone is ringing and I'll look at the number and before I answer it, I'll say, Lord, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight. Oh, Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Listen, because I need the right words, right? For
Yes.
this situation, I need
Mhm.
to know what to say in this situation. So,
Yep.
the that power of pausing is the thing that can ground us in a given situation. About a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a week or so ago, I had a situation that was just a very triggering situation, and I was with my sister. And you've known me long enough to know that, I'm pretty calm,
You
right?
are.
I
Yeah.
am, it takes a lot, to get me to any point.
Right.
Where I am just kind of my energy rises around a certain thing. But this was a
Mhm.
situation that had something to do with a person I love dearly, right? And you know how parents are and children are, so and I had that moment of, so what you not gonna do with it? I had that moment, Betty, and it took me there. Right. And so again, it's not perfection, it's about desire. My
Mhm.
desire is to be everything we talked about. But this was a given moment. And in the situation, I did match this person's energy.
Mhm.
Right. But
Mhm.
what I let, and it felt good in the moment. It felt
Right.
good in the moment because it was pleasing to that flesh part of me.
Yes.
But the conviction afterwards was just, okay, I should have done that differently.
Right.
I should have been different in that
Mhm.
situation. I should have been what we've talked about in that situation.
Mhm.
So it was such a learning moment for me, just a moment to be reflective and introspective,
Mhm.
about the situation. And so it's not about, we'll have those moments where we fall, we'll have those moments where we stumble.
Right.
It is about having a heart to be what we need to be in a given situation, and what is pleasing for me, what is pleasing to God in a
Yeah.
given situation.
I'm going to go back to that wonderful word you said of grace. And
Mhm.
so we have to think about extending that grace to others because we may need it ourselves. When
Mhm.
those moments come, when we're not at our best, and they will come because we are not perfection, being able to say, give yourself a little bit of grace, but also extend that grace to others. And if somebody did something to you, just be willing to accept those people's apologies if they come,
Mhm.
and offer forgiveness when that's necessary, because I guarantee you're going to need it yourself at some point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Gonna
That
need it.
is so true. That is so true. Is, I love what you said, for us to give grace so
Mhm.
that we can receive it when we need it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Push that pride aside. That's what gets in our way all the time. It's
Mhm.
that pride that we
Yeah.
have. And so we've elevated ourselves so high that we feel like, who are you to come to me in a to say or do something like this, without realizing a lot of times we've done the same thing, right? So
Mhm.
you
For
failed in that
sure.
area as well. So humble yourself, person,
Mhm.
get all that pride
Mhm.
out of the way, because
Mhm.
you faltered as well and you've offended people, and we are not turning that mirror back on ourselves
We're
enough
not.
times.
We're not.
Yeah, so it takes humility to do that and to be that. Well, let me tell you something. This can go on and on and on and on. The conversations are always so good. I always learn so much from you, and I always enjoy these kinds of meaningful conversations. And I hope you will come back, because I got so many more things I want to talk about. We have only scratched the surface in terms of people issues. They
Yeah.
are everywhere. There's a plethora of them. And people are searching for answers on how to repair some of the things that are broken, including those things within ourselves. So I
Mhm.
hope you will agree to come back and we
Oh,
can have another conversation.
absolutely. Betty, this has been such an honor. And let me just applaud what you're doing to create a podcast with a focus on people issues. That's what we are. We are on this journey together.
Yes.
And if we can work on our issues together,
Together.
makes us better people as we are all walking out this journey. So I appreciate you raising people issues, that you are bringing it to light so
Hmm.
that we can consider, where am I? How can I be a better person, even as I'm dealing with my issues and I'm
Hmm.
dealing with others with their issues? Because the reality is we all have them.
We
And the
all have
best way we can serve each other is make space for each other's issues and give grace to be better people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Great summary on that one. I appreciate you. And I'm going to welcome and invite all of our viewers. I know you got some things you want to say about this. We've covered the gamut. And so we respect your opinions. Would like to invite those opinions in, share with us as long as you're respectful. Share them in the comment section. Oh, and by the way, I got a little something for you if you will do that. So there is a wonderful leadership conference that's coming up on September 3rd from Global Core Strategies. My great friend Ron Harvey is holding this wonderful leadership conference called Unpacked. And there's just a whole host of really strong speakers that are going to be there. I have a ticket I'd like to give away to somebody. It is on October 3rd from 8 to 4 at the R2I2 location. So please feel free to pick up your own ticket. I think you can do that until September 26th, I believe it is. I might have that date wrong, but you still have time to get your own ticket. But why not get a free one here right now? So, Dr. Katrina, can you help me with this one? What will we do? How can we give this ticket away? What do they have to do in order to grab this ticket?
What if they respond to you in the comments with at least 3 nuggets they took away from the conversation today?
Awesome. That would work. That would work.
First person who does
First
it.
person.
First person who does it.
All righty. So that means you got to listen to the whole thing. I mean, if they got this far, they've already listened. And so we invite you all to be a part of this valuable discussion. So thank you so much for listening. And then we just invite you to come back next week. I'm going to have another guest to talk about yet another people issue. Have a great week.